Is physical media making a comeback? As you might have noticed, I'm a bit of a fan of physical media. You also might have noticed if you clicked on this video that there's also a conversation going around about the importance of physical media. People are getting fed up with this world of paying hundreds of dollars a month for streaming services. People are sick of streaming services, says man with wall of Blu-rays behind him. However, I've noticed that fans of physical media like myself also like to pretend like there's no downside to only watching movies on disc. There are certainly pros and cons for both ways to access films and TV shows. The hell, this isn't what I bought. So I want to talk about the ups and downs of streaming versus physical media. And I'm gonna be brutally honest, no one is safe. I'm an older millennial, so I still remember the glory days of going to the video store twice every weekend, browsing the shelves and getting really stressed out because the enjoyment of my entire weekend hinged on which movie I decided to bring home. Now, if you're streaming something on Netflix and nothing within the first 10 minutes makes you look up from your phone, you just turn it off. But that wasn't an option in the late 20th century. At a very young age, I had a very large VHS collection. Not that I still do or anything. So much so that my dad would berate me for going to the video store every weekend because, you know, we already had a video store at home. And when DVDs started to become mainstream and we got our first DVD player, it was a big deal. I was around 11 or 12, so I was sophisticated enough to be able to tell the difference in quality between a VHS and a DVD. Movies clearly looked way better on DVD, and I spent hours going through the DVD bonus features, watching behind-the-scenes documentaries and listening to DVD commentaries. You could watch movies in their correct aspect ratio, playing the very simple single-click games on the Sorcerer's Stone DVD. Like I said, very sophisticated. As I got older, I lost interest in amassing a DVD collection. Coinciding with the 2008 recession, sales on DVDs began to drop. To this day, if you stay at an Airbnb or, you know, your aunt's house, you'll probably see the same stack of DVDs that everybody bought from 2001 to 2006. There's always a copy of 13 Going on 30, one of the Narnia movies, sometimes a random X-Men movie gets thrown in there, or Spider-Man 3, Shrek 2, and of course Passion of the Christ. Why is it always the same random assortment of DVDs that you see here and Goodwill? Well, because mostly people stopped buying DVDs around this time. People who actually care started switching over to Blu-ray, and the rest of the population was like, what are Blu-rays? When Blu-rays came out, they came off as, I feel, confusing to the average consumer.
What do they say about the picture quality?
Wow. Wow.
There's a big difference, you know, even physically between this and this, but the difference between DVD and Blu-ray is a lot more subtle. And with streaming becoming a lot more of an accessible option going into the 2010s, most consumers were happy to just embrace streaming with open arms.
The quality of the streaming video is excellent. Excellent.
So what did we gain in this new world of streaming? Well, I have to admit, especially during a global pandemic, that it was nice that I didn't have to journey out to the germ-infested theaters just to see Godzilla vs. Kong. I could just watch it at home, not have to worry about anything. But besides convenience, the main positive I can think of for this world of streaming is that we have access to more films than we ever have before. The convenience of being able to watch a once really hard to find movie with just a few single clicks is pretty rad. Growing up, the only movies that I really had access to were the ones at my local video store. Either that or the ones that would just play on TV, which were always heavily edited for content and for commercials.
Police work is not about proper action. Or silt.
Having only a pretty slim selection of movies to see from my video store is, you know, why I've seen movies like My Boyfriend's Back. So that did allow me to watch movies that, you know, today's generation would probably never bother with because of all the options they have. But the downside of this is that I really didn't have a knowledge of like world cinema really until I went to film school. Into college, I started renting movies through the Netflix DVD subscription, which was exciting at first, you know, before video stores started closing, because now I could finally rent films that I had never had access to before. Thanks not just to streaming, but the internet in general and social media apps like Letterboxd, people can discover cult films, obscure movies, international cinema, and actually watch them. There's a whole world of cinema that is now wide open to anyone that has an internet connection. So that's my main defense for the world of streaming. It's really that and just sheer convenience, which doesn't sound like that much of a chore, but I'm not gonna lie, if I can stream something, especially a TV show, instead of going through the discs and trying to navigate which disc the episode I wanna watch is on, then going through all the logos and commercials, some of which they make it so you can't skip, only to realize that that episode of Space that you wanted to watch has been damaged and is skipping now. That's a major issue that no one ever brings up when talking about physical media. People always say, when you own this, you own it forever. Which is only kind of true. I mean, eventually everything deteriorates with time. I try to take good care of all of my physical media, but sometimes
unforeseen consequences occur.
And sometimes discs just get damaged, which is why I've had to buy Spaced on DVD twice. Oh God, which one's the undamaged one? Not to mention that technology is always changing. I'm sure people hoarding VHS tapes in the 90s thought that they would keep and watch those tapes forever. Even the studios, when selling them, would advertise them that way, saying, buy this tape, you can show it to your future generations.
But if you'd like them to forever stay in your home, you have to act fast. Now's the only time you can add these classics to your collection before they disappear from video stores.
But I don't know if you've noticed, not many people are watching VHS tapes now. In 40 years, VHS tapes will basically be what film projectors are now, with only a handful of people even knowing how to maintain and use them. It's hard to imagine something like that happening with Blu-rays in like 20 years, but who knows? In 20 years, we could all be watching movies like this. DVDs technically have a shelf life of 100 to 200 years, but most people who collect physical media have already upgraded to Blu-ray, and for good reason. With our current HD and 4K TVs, DVDs look like piss. Especially some of the early ones are in really low res quality with like no HD upscaling. They look worse than if you watched them on YouTube, which is all the more reason they should just stop putting new movies on DVD. It's just insane to me that when I go to Walmart, there are more DVD copies of a new release than there are 4K copies. I get it, there's still the average consumer that just will buy DVDs because they just don't know. Every time I see one of those Criterion Closet videos and a person like reaches for and takes one of the DVD copies of the movie, I'm like, no, what are you doing? And I'll admit I still do own a few DVDs, but mostly that's because, you know, these aren't on Blu-ray yet, or they're just a lot harder to find streaming. As much as I've talked about the benefits of streaming, I still think physical media is the way to go. I mean, clearly, streaming may have a leg up because of its convenience, which is why it's completely taken over the way people watch things now. And I'm very guilty of this. I bought a copy of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory on 4K disc a few months ago, and then one day I was just like scrolling through Max, clicked on it, started watching it, and about halfway through I realized, oh wait, I have this on 4K, what am I doing? But even though people have access to more stuff than they ever have before, the glut of streaming services, I think, is actually destroying the ability to discover, especially for general audiences who may only have one or two streaming services. Netflix has essentially now become the new small town video store. You're only getting a small window of what is out there. If you know, that video store was also making bad Adam Sandler movies. In the same way that if the video store I had growing up didn't have a movie, I just didn't know about it. For a lot of people now, if it's not streaming on Netflix, they're not gonna watch it. I was telling my coworker about this really interesting movie that I think he would like, and I was like, oh, I'll lend you a copy of the movie on Blu-ray. I have it on Blu-ray, I'll let you borrow it. And he said, well, oh, I don't have a Blu-ray player. And that was just the end of that conversation. He will probably never watch that movie because it's not on Netflix or Max or Hulu, and it probably never will be. Because that movie came out in the 70s, and I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a bit of a bias towards newer movies in streaming services. Now, there is a small positive aspect to this. Same way that some movies used to have second lives on VHS. I think there are some movies now that can have second lives through streaming. I truly think that one of the reasons that Scott Pilgrim vs. the World became a cult classic was because of how long it was on Netflix and how easily accessible it was. So it's a complicated issue. There are some legitimate reasons why the world of streaming is a good thing. But now let's get into the nitty-gritty of why I surround myself with these. I've already talked about how the 4K and Blu-ray discs are the best way to watch a movie based on quality. I've heard a lot of arguments that if you download a movie to your device in 4K, it will be just as good a quality as a disc. But I have literally bought a movie and downloaded it to my Apple TV, and the quality still drops down. Another movie I bought on Apple TV came with a bunch of special features, which is awesome because, you know, that used to be a big factor in deciding between a movie on disc or downloading it. If I can still get all the bonus features from buying it online, that's a big incentive. But wouldn't you know it, as soon as I started watching the movie with the audio commentary, there was a glitch where the picture just stopped playing and the commentary continued, and no update was able to fix this. Bonus content is also pretty wildly inconsistent. This year, Max released an audio commentary for Barbie, which you can stream, which is great, except for that it was missing from the physical release. I guess you could argue that this was a promotion incentive for Max, you know, get a Max subscription so you can listen to the Greta Gerwig commentary. Except except that they didn't promote this commentary in any way. I only stumbled upon it when I was browsing through the all movies section. Speaking of DVD extras, and I guess we're going back into the cons for physical medias for just a second, but bonus features for physical releases nowadays is really lacking. This mostly has to do with the sales in physical media going down, so you can't exactly put a lot of resources into your bonus content anymore. But most filmmakers just seem disinterested in doing them. I can understand just wanting your film to speak for itself, but filmmaker commentaries and behind-the-scenes documentaries are really what fueled my love for movies at a young age. I feel like I learned a lot of the ins and outs of what a film production is like just from listening to DVD commentary. You have a few filmmakers who still really care about this kind of thing. Edgar Wright always has tons of behind-the-scenes extras on his movies, usually recording multiple commentaries, but for the most part, it's a barren desert. And most of the ones that end up on discs are very short, polished, electronic press kit documentaries that are usually online before they're even on the disc anyway. There was so much put into DVDs back in the day that even the menus were fun and creative. If you were a kid in the 2000s, you probably remember falling asleep to a movie and then waking up in the middle of the night to this. Or this. Or this. How about the fact that the Star Wars DVDs had different menus for each time that you took out and put the disc back in? And the Wayne's World DVD menu looked like one of those old TV Guide channels. Now you just get a random stock image and music in the background if you're lucky. What I'm saying is this used to be a great country. A country where we could be proud of our animated Ghostbusters DVD menus. What it all comes down to though for me is consistency. When I want to watch Casa de Mi Padre, which I think I paid $2 for, I can just walk over to this shelf, pick it up and pop it in. I don't have to look up what streaming service it's on, see that it's not even on one of the 8 streaming sites I already subscribe to. So then I try to rent it on Apple TV only to find out that the only way I can see it is if I stream it with ads or buy it for $20, only to find out that I could have rented it on YouTube, except for that option didn't pop up when I searched how to rent Panic Room. That very thing actually happened to me last week when I tried to watch Panic Room, which currently is not available on Blu-ray. Sad. People talk about how complicated streaming is, that this will eventually lead to a revival in physical media, that young people will start collecting movies like they do vinyl. I really hope that's the case, you know? I don't think it'll go mainstream. I don't think we'll ever see people buying as many movies as we did back in 2003. Even collecting vinyl isn't as popular as it was in the 70s, but it's definitely way more popular than it was 20 years ago. For me, personally, I like having a library. I like holding something in my hand. I love it when people come over and they'll just involuntarily start looking at my shelf and they'll start browsing movies, and that'll lead to conversations about movies and what they have and haven't seen, and that's something you just don't get with streaming. Plus, when the internet apocalypse happens, I'll have all the entertainment I ever need.
Wow.
Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm running out of room here, so I need to go build a video store in my basement. If I had one. But he has a little bit of toothache or something. I'm gonna have to go to the vet tomorrow and check that out. Subscribe.
Wow, this has just been such a pleasure. I'm such a lucky boy. I can't wait to go home